That day when my mom and dad went away, I thought I'd finally have a quiet weekend. But I never expected him. I never expected my stepbrother would change everything. It started when my mom remarried. At first, I didn't think much of it. Even when the house began to feel different, I told myself it was just temporary, that things would settle down eventually. But then Jace showed up, her new husband's son. I'd seen him around campus a few times. Quiet, older, kept to himself. We'd never talked. We were only a couple of years apart, so I figured getting along wouldn't be hard. But I was wrong. The day he walked through our front door, slinging his bag over his shoulder, that distant look in his eyes, something inside me shifted. I didn't understand it then. I told myself it was just the weirdness of having a stranger suddenly become family. But deep down, I knew it was more. His room was right across the hall from mine. That first night, I heard his voice through the walls, low, soft, like he was talking to himself. I didn't know it then, but that voice would stay with me even in silence. As the days passed, things started to feel normal. We exchanged polite hellos in the hallway. Nothing more. He'd retreat to his room after school, and I'd do the same. But then, one afternoon, something changed. I found myself standing outside his door. I don't even remember deciding to walk there. My feet just took me. I didn't know if he was home. I wasn't sure why I was standing there at all. Maybe I wanted to hear his voice again. Maybe I just wanted to be near him. Before I could move, the door opened. I froze. Jace stood there, surprised. His eyes flicked to the side, then back to mine. For a moment, I saw something in his face. Uncertainty, maybe, but it vanished just as quickly. "Hey," he said. His voice was quiet, careful. Hey," I mumbled, too loud in the stillness of the hallway. My palms started to sweat. I had no idea what I was doing there. "You need something?" he asked, unreadable. I couldn't tell if he was annoyed or just indifferent, but there was something about him that made it hard to look away. I shook my head. "No, I was just walking by." It sounded ridiculous, even to me. He paused for a second, then stepped aside. "Come in if you want." I hesitated. We barely knew each other, but something pulled me forward, curiosity, maybe, or something deeper I couldn't name. His room was dim, a little messy, but not in a chaotic way. Clothes on the floor, a guitar against the wall, a stack of books by the bed, posters I didn't recognize. I tried not to stare, but everything about it felt like a glimpse into him. He stood by the window, his back to me, looking out at the fading light. "What's up?" I asked, just to say something. He turned slightly, a small smile playing on his lips. "Nothing much. Just thinking." That was Jace, always somewhere in his own head. But there was a weight in his words that made my chest tighten. "You play guitar?" I nodded toward the wall. "Yeah, for a while now. Just a hobby." I nodded again. The silence stretched between us. My heart was beating too fast. I didn't know what to say next, and I hated how awkward I felt. "So, how's it going?" I asked, voice low. "You know, with everything." Jace turned to face me fully now. His expression was unreadable. "It's fine. Just weird. Everything's new." I nodded. I knew exactly what he meant. It wasn't just the house that was unfamiliar. It was this us, and I didn't know what to do with that. As the evening went on, something shifted. A quiet understanding passed between us. Neither of us named it, but we both felt it. Something unspoken beginning to take shape. I was about to leave when Jace spoke again, voice softer this time. "Stay a little longer." It wasn't a question, more like a quiet offer. I nodded, but it felt like I was saying yes to something more than just sitting in his room. Something I didn't understand yet. The days after that felt different. Maybe I was imagining it, but every time I saw Jace, something in me stirred. My heart would race. My thoughts would stutter. He hadn't changed, not on the surface. Still quiet, still in his own world. But the air between us had. I saw it in the way he looked at me when we passed each other in the hallway. The way his voice softened when he spoke my name. Like he didn't want to notice. But he did. And I did too. First, it was small things. A glance that lasted too long. Silences that stretched into something else. Something thick with meaning. I tried to push it away, tried to tell myself I was imagining things. But when I sat alone at the kitchen table or passed by his room, my thoughts always returned to him. To his voice, his eyes, his presence. I hadn't wanted any of this, but now I couldn't ignore it, and I never thought it would go that far. With her husband on one side of the table, and Jace and me on the other, dinner always felt careful. The conversations were light. Talk about college, our days, random things, but underneath it all, something lingered. A quiet tension. An unspoken truth that neither of us dared to name. Every now and then, I'd catch Jace looking at me from across the table. His expression gave nothing away. But I couldn't help wondering, was he feeling it too? It was a Friday night when everything shifted, when it all got more complicated than I was ready for. I had stayed up late finishing some homework I'd been putting off. The house was still silent, except for the occasional creak of floorboards. I was just about to call it a night when I heard a soft knock at my door. My heart skipped. I knew it was him before I even opened it. Jace stood in the hallway, the dim light casting shadows on his face. His eyes were locked on mine, like he was trying to figure something out. I waited, unsure of what to say. "Hey," he said quietly, almost hesitating. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Something in his voice made my chest tighten. He wasn't looking at me the way he usually did, detached, unreadable. This time there was something behind his gaze, something that felt real. "Sure," I said, stepping aside to let him in, even as my pulse began to race. He sat on the edge of my bed, running a hand through his hair, eyes downcast. "I don't know if you've noticed," he started, voice soft, thick with something I couldn't name, "but things feel different between us." I blinked, unsure. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He finally looked at me. His eyes weren't guarded like before. They were open, raw. There was a kind of vulnerability there I'd never seen. "I don't know what to make of it," he said, voice so low I almost missed it. "But I can't stop thinking about you." His words hit like a thunderclap, quiet, but powerful. I froze. My thoughts scattered. My heart hammered in my chest. He stood up suddenly, pacing, like the words had pushed something loose inside him. His boots hit the floor hard with every step, and I couldn't stop watching him. "You don't get it," he said, turning to face me again. His chest was rising and falling fast. Whatever this is between us, I can't ignore it anymore. It's too much, and it's only getting stronger." I swallowed, trying to steady myself. He was standing so close now. The air between us buzzed, thick and heavy. I couldn't speak, couldn't even move. Everything I'd tried to ignore was crashing to the surface all at once. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he stepped closer. So close I could feel the heat coming off him. His eyes never left mine. "I don't know, Logan," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But I'm done pretending." And in that moment, something in the world shifted. Like all the careful silence we'd built between us had started to fall apart. Before I could make sense of it, he left. Just like that. Leaving me standing there with nothing but his words echoing in my mind. But the truth was, he's my stepbrother. And nothing about this is simple. The days that followed blurred together. Jace and I had fallen into a rhythm. A quiet orbit around each other. Neither of us spoke about what had happened. But everything felt different. We hadn't crossed a line. Not really. But it felt like we were standing on the edge of something we didn't know how to handle. There were glances that lingered longer than they should. Moments when our hands brushed too slowly. The tension between us wasn't just awkward, it was electric. But still, nothing was said. We danced around it. Pretended things hadn't changed. But they had. And we both knew it. Then, one evening at dinner, Mom mentioned something casually. Something that made everything inside me tighten. "Your father and I are thinking of going away for the weekend," she said, sipping her tea. "It's been so long since we've had time for just the two of us." I kept my eyes on my plate, but my ears sharpened at every word. Jace didn't react much. He stayed calm, swirling the ice in his glass before taking a slow sip. But I saw it, the slight tension in his jaw, the flicker of something behind his eyes before he masked it again. "Oh," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "Where are you going?" "Just a little getaway," Mom said. "Your father hasn't picked the place yet. We'll leave Friday night and be back Sunday evening. 2 full days. Alone. With Jace." I swallowed hard. My chest felt too tight, and my heartbeat was suddenly way too loud. "That means you two will have to behave," Mom said, giving us a mock stern look. "No fighting. No staying up all night and trashing the house." She turned to Jace. "And you don't go anywhere this weekend. I want you to look after your brother." Jace smirked, finally breaking the silence. "Can't promise anything, Mom." I shot him a look. He just chuckled and leaned back in his chair. Mom sighed and shook her head playfully. "Just don't kill each other, all right?" I nodded, managing a smile. But inside, my stomach was twisted into knots. The thought of spending a whole weekend alone with him terrified me. And if I told you it didn't also excite me, I'd be lying. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner conversation over and over. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it would be a normal weekend, that nothing would happen. But deep down I knew better. Something between us had already begun to shift. And soon, there would be no parents, no distractions, no excuses, and nothing left to hide behind. The next few days dragged on, stretched thin with nervous anticipation. Neither of us brought up the weekend trip, and I had no idea what Jace was thinking. He wasn't as playful as usual. His teasing had quieted. His jokes came less often. Felt like he was pulling away. And maybe I was too. Finally, Friday arrived. Mom and Dad packed their bags in the morning, rushing around the house with reminders about dinner in the fridge, emergency numbers on the fridge, and please, for the love of God, no parties. "We'll be back Sunday night," Dad said, hugging me goodbye. I nodded, though my throat felt dry. And just like that, they were gone. The house fell into silence. Jace stood in the living room, stretching with a lazy groan, arms overhead. His shirt rode up slightly, revealing a narrow line of skin across his waist. My eyes flicked to it before I forced myself to look away. "Well," he said, glancing at me with that familiar smirk, "looks like it's just us." I swallowed and gripped the hem of my sweater tighter. Just us. And that was when it really began. The first day felt normal. At least that's what I kept telling myself. We fell into our usual pattern. Jace ate breakfast in the kitchen. I picked at mine alone on the couch. He disappeared into his room for most of the morning. It was almost too quiet, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but expectant. Like the pause between two heartbeats. Around midday he wandered out. He stretched again, this time wearing sweatpants that hung low on his hips, his tank top clinging to his chest in a way that made my brain stutter for half a second before I forced myself to look away. He grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter, watching me. "You gonna sit there all day?" he asked, taking a sip. I shrugged, eyes still on my phone. "Maybe. You're boring." He rolled his eyes. "Then go find something entertaining to do." I smirked. "Maybe I will." He pushed off the counter with a small grin. Maybe I already did. There was something in his voice, something I couldn't name. But before I could think too much about it, he walked past me and ruffled my hair like I was a kid. I swatted at his hand, ignoring the way my skin tingled where he touched me. The rest of the day, I did everything I could to avoid him. I played video games, scrolled aimlessly, even went for a short run just to get out of my own head. But the problem was, Jace wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't touching me inappropriately. He wasn't saying anything he shouldn't. He was just there, existing, and somehow that was enough to unravel me. Every glance, every movement, every breath he took. It felt deliberate, like it was meant to push me off balance. By the time night rolled around, I was exhausted. "Going to shower," I muttered, not bothering to look at him. He was sprawled across the couch, one arm behind his head. He didn't reply. I grabbed my clothes and disappeared into the bathroom, shutting the door behind me. The second I was alone, I let out a shaky breath. I needed to get a grip. This was just Jace being Jace. Playful, cocky, a little annoying. That's all. My mind was blowing everything out of proportion. But even as I tried to believe that, I couldn't stop remembering the way his gaze had lingered. That night, I tossed and turned. Sleep refused to come. The house was too quiet. I could hear every creak, every shift of the wind outside. And somewhere down the hall, I knew. Somehow, that Jace was still awake too. I don't know how I knew. I just felt it. And for some reason, that made sleep impossible. The second day started just like the first. Breakfast, scrolling through my phone, trying not to think too much. Jace wasn't avoiding me, but he wasn't teasing me either. He was watching me, like he was waiting for something, like he knew something I didn't. I tried to act normal, but the weight of his gaze was impossible to ignore. Every time I looked up, his eyes were already on me, and he didn't even pretend to look away. It was unnerving. By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. What? I snapped, slamming my phone down. Why do you keep looking at me like that? Jace was sitting on the armrest of the couch, casually spinning a pen between his fingers. He raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Like what? Like that. I waved my hand, frustrated. Like you're waiting for something. A slow, knowing smile crept across his face. Maybe I am. I swallowed. My mouth had gone dry. Well, stop. His smile didn't fade. He leaned back, arms stretched behind his head, totally relaxed. Whatever you say, little brother. My skin prickled. I hated the way he said that. The rest of the day passed in a haze of silence and tension. We didn't talk much, but we didn't have to. The air between us felt thick, charged with something we hadn't said aloud. Something neither of us was ready to name. Not yet. And then, as night fell, something shifted. I didn't realize it at the time. I was the only one who didn't see what was coming. Jace walked out of the bathroom, towel drying his hair, wearing nothing but sweatpants. He said nothing, just passed by me, water droplets sliding down his bare shoulders. His body wash clung to the air between us, sharp and clean and distracting. I told myself not to look, told myself it was nothing. But when he paused by my door, when his eyes found mine with an expression I couldn't quite name, the air around us seemed to tilt. I swallowed hard, pretending to scroll through my phone. Jace leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, gaze steady. You good? I forced a laugh, though my voice cracked at the edges. Yeah. Why wouldn't I be? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me. Really looked. Like he was deciding something in his head. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but I kept my face blank. Nothing, he finally said, voice low. You just seem different. I looked up at him, trying to sound casual. Different how? He shrugged, but there was nothing casual about the way his eyes lingered. I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining it. I scoffed, shaking my head. Maybe you are. He gave a small hum, as if weighing my words. Then, without saying anything else, he turned and walked away. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. This was getting ridiculous. The tension between us had been simmering for days, but now it felt like a live wire in the air. Every glance, every silence, every moment felt like it was pushing us closer to something I didn't want to name. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Jace sat across from me, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass, the low light casting shadows across his face. The way he looked at me had changed, longer, deeper, like something was unraveling inside him. I pushed my plate aside, my voice sharp in the silence. You've been staring at me all night. He didn't respond right away. His jaw tightened, his fingers tensed. You're imagining things, he muttered finally, standing up and walking to the sink. But I wasn't. I'd felt it last night too. The way his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't looking, the way the silence between us felt charged, like a storm about to break. I stood and followed him. No. I'm not. Jace stiffened, his back still turned. His hands gripped the edge of the counter so tightly, His knuckles turned white. "Go to bed," he said, his voice quiet, rough. "Jace." I stepped closer. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his breath faltered just slightly. Then he reached out, his fingers barely brushing mine. And when he turned, suddenly he was right there. His eyes locked on mine, dark, unreadable. There was something raw in them, something fragile and dangerous. "Stop," I whispered, even though I didn't mean it. "Stop what?" His voice was low, hoarse. "This, whatever this is." His jaw clenched. His fingers twitched like he was holding something back. "I don't know what you're talking about." He let out a bitter laugh, short and humorless. But I could feel it, that invisible current pulling us closer. The weight of every unspoken word. The space between us thinned until it barely existed at all. I should have stepped away. I didn't. Instead, I whispered, "Then say it." His breath hitched. His eyes closed for half a second. Then, "I can't control myself around you." The words hit like a crack of thunder. Rough, honest, broken. "I've tried," he said, voice shaking. "I swear to God, I've tried. But every second I'm in this house with you, I feel like I'm losing my mind." I was frozen. My heart beat so loudly, I could barely hear anything else. And I knew exactly what he meant, because I felt it too. Jace ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "This is wrong." "Then why don't you stop?" That silenced him. His eyes found mine again. A war raged behind them, hesitation, guilt, desire. Then something in him broke. He moved first. 1 second there was space. The next, none. His hand cupped the back of my neck, his forehead resting against mine, breath hot between us. "Tell me to walk away," he murmured. "Just say the word." I met his eyes. I should have said it, but I didn't. "Don't." That was all it took. What happened next wasn't fast or slow. It was inevitable. He didn't kiss me. Not at first. He just stayed there, breathing like he was trying to hold something in. Then finally, he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was built-up tension. Years of pretending. Months of silence. A fire that had been waiting to burn. His hands gripped my waist, my shirt fisted in his hands. His breath shuddered against my skin. I felt the weight of everything between us pressing in from all sides. We stumbled, half blind, toward my room, not saying a word. When the door shut behind us, the silence was deafening. He pressed his forehead to mine again, chest rising and falling like a storm was trapped inside him. "This is crazy," he whispered. "Then stop," I said softly, but we both knew he wouldn't. He leaned in again, closer, deeper, and I let him. His hand slid lower, and for a second, the air between us felt charged, like a wire pulled too tight. My breath caught when his lips brushed the sensitive spot just below my ear. I shivered. "Jace," I whispered, barely audible. He froze, his forehead pressed against mine, his breath ragged, his hands gripping the edge of the sheets like they were the only thing keeping him grounded. For a long moment he didn't move. His body was tense, his heartbeat thudding in sync with mine. "This isn't just some mistake, is it?" he murmured, his voice rough, uncertain. I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Does it feel like a mistake to you?" His gaze locked on mine, searching me like he was afraid of the answer. Then slowly he exhaled and shook his head.
"No."
"It doesn't." Something shifted. Something unspoken passed between us, raw and quiet. Jace leaned in again, but this time it wasn't frantic or rushed. There was still a hunger and need, but now it felt deliberate. His touch lingered. His breath was warm. Every movement slow, as if he was committing this to memory. And I let myself fall. Every moment, every glance, every second of tension that had been building between us for weeks. It all cracked open. I didn't think. I didn't analyze. I just felt. But I told myself this would be the first and last time. When the light crept through the curtains the next morning, everything felt unreal. The warmth of the sheets, the faint scent of him in the air, the weight of his arm draped over my waist. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality returned. I turned slightly. Jace was awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, jaw clenched tight. "Hey!" I said softly. His gaze flicked to me, but he didn't speak right away. The silence between us was heavy. Then finally, "Hey!" His voice was low, rough, like he hadn't slept. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask what this meant. Another part was too afraid to hear the answer. Jace sat up, running a hand over his face. He didn't look at me. "Jace?" I began, unsure where I was even going with it. He let out a bitter breath, half a laugh, half a sigh. "Do you regret it?" I asked, quieter than before. He looked at me then, really looked. "No," he said. "That's the problem." And just like that, something inside me tightened. We sat in silence, tangled in thoughts, in sheets, in everything we didn't know how to say. Then, a car door slammed outside. My stomach dropped. Jace's head snapped toward the window. Our eyes met. Mom and Dad. Panic surged through me. We scrambled, pulling on clothes, throwing the room back together like it hadn't held a secret just hours ago. I fumbled with buttons. My hands were shaking. Jace was already at the door when I turned to him, my breath uneven. "This isn't over," he said, voice low, gaze steady. And then he was gone. I barely had time to collect myself before I heard my mother's voice calling out from downstairs. The illusion of normal snapped back into place. We didn't talk about it that day, or the next, or the week after, but it didn't matter, because it happened again, and again. Every time they were away, it became an unspoken rule. By day, we were stepbrothers. We sat at the same table, helped carry groceries, laughed at Dad's bad jokes. But when the house was quiet, when the night settled in and the walls felt like they held their breath, we became something else entirely. It always began the same way. A glance across the room, a shift in the air, a reason to be alone. Sometimes it was subtle, a brush of hands in the hallway, a pause too long in the doorway. Other times it was blatant. Jace would show up at my door, say nothing, just look at me, and I'd let him in. No matter how many times I told myself this was dangerous. No matter how many times we whispered, "Never again." We always came back, because pretending it didn't exist was harder than hiding it. By morning, we returned to normal. We never spoke about it, never acknowledged it in daylight. But at night, when the world went quiet and no one was watching, we burned. And that secret, whatever it was between us, it lived in the silence, in the spaces between footsteps, in every breath we tried to hold back, in everything we could never say out loud.